Well, we're very stubborn. Like the old Monty Python with his leg missing, he's still hopping. That's us. When you launch a project a week before Terra Luna and the world crumbles around you, we just
Right.
we can't quit. We don't know when we'll be, so we'll be around. Don't
I
worry
love
about
it.
that. Trying to get the Foxify logo in.
Yeah, got to get that in there. And
Yeah.
finally, we're here. So we got Danny from Foxify. Welcome.
Hello.
And then
Thank you
to
for
my
having us.
left or right, or whoever this is edited, we got Colin. Y'all's been meeting Colin more and more, especially here on the YouTube channel. Colin, his brain is the size of the freaking universe when it comes to project. He juggles 30, 40 projects probably on any given day. And we probably say no to 98% of opportunities because I think most of the space is total crap. And we're just looking for who's building on something that is solid and has longevity and is solving a real problem. I see every one of these projects like a business. What is the team like? What's the marketing department like? And I think Foxify is the first project, I'm not getting paid for this, and I honestly don't even know how the affiliate stuff works. I think I'm on there, but I have no idea how it works, and I don't care. I think Foxify was the first project I've seen in a while that I'm like, this is a company here. Like they built a company, and that stands a chance to actually doing something. And I like what I see, so I'm excited for this chat.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're very we're very serious about our long-term ambitions. People keep asking, even now, when you listen on central exchanges, they say, "What are your roadmap?" And I feel like we should have like an online casino, a DEX, and a couple of other sort of cliche roadmap items just to throw at them. But in truth, we're like, well, we want to build a world-class platform and we want to scale it, and then we want to expand into other markets. What do you want from a roadmap, right? We want, it's think of it almost like a SaaS model. That's you don't launch a SaaS business and then talk about building your business in 6 months. It's now. It's here and now.
Totally. So good. We had a quick little brief chat right before. Now, I will just say to anyone who's watching, there are a lot of really good AMAs out there with Danny that deal with all the technical aspects of Foxify. I think the white paper is really, really solid. I think if someone spends 10 minutes on a white paper, they'll get all the answers they need on how the platform works. And I think your unique kind of value proposition, what you do different than the other projects out there. I've been a big fan of GMX since day one, and I've done really well with them because the market wanted something like that. Yeah. What I wanted to ask a question here, like what is and I know the answer, but what is Foxify? And I dislike the question of, oh, why is Foxify better than? I don't really believe in that. I think it's there's more than enough pie out there to go around. What's Foxify bringing that's different than, let's say, GMX or some of the other platforms? I know you guys are Arbitrum, but what's Foxify bringing that's different?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think like huge kudos to GMX. They've obviously done a fantastic job. It's a great team, and their biggest strength is probably being the first one to build that sort of liquidity on chain is a huge value, and it's it's very difficult to rival the fundamentals of that. But we have to focus on our own areas. So what's fundamentally different, and GMX actually why has GMX been so successful, right? It's because the number one concern of any trader is will the platform or broker that I'm using be solvent in the morning? And you could dedicate your whole life, learn from Shaolin monks and all sorts and become the best trader there ever was, but if your exchange goes bust whilst you're sleeping, then you're zero, just like everybody else. And so that's why they've been wildly successful. I think then if you think beyond that, so I think that's problem number one. If you interview traders, very large traders are more preoccupied with fees, but if you average out, actually user experience is number two, and fees comes in a very close number three. And people who are even semi-professional traders that trading on a regular basis, they want the experience to be very positive. And when you look at platforms that exist today, it's easy for us to forget in DeFi, but you remember when you first went from, I think the first thing I ever bought was Bitcoin, and I bought it decentralized. But then I remember I bought Doge a long time ago, and I bought that on a centralized platform. And when I went from that to decentralized, trying to learn about bridging, gas, MetaMask, seed phrases, all of it was just is mind blowing. And several years later, that's all a distant memory. But if you look at the numbers, the derivatives volume on centralized exchanges is 50 times what it is on decentralized exchanges, despite the fact that they don't solve the number one concern, which is the solvency of the platform that you're operating on. So why is that? And really, user experience is an easy one to miss. So to really Foxify in terms of its user experience, really unique. You land on the platform, you can go the Web3 route if you're comfortable with that, or you can go the OptiTrade route, as we call it. And the OptiTrade route, you can sign up with your email, you can on-ramp, you can choose a gasless experience, and the smart contract looks after the gas in the background for you, and then you can off-ramp as well. So that whole circle. Now, in time, that person then in their own time can transition to that Web3 experience. So that's probably like the single biggest, but our I don't know if you've got any questions on that, but our options model as well is insanely unique. GMX has been hugely successful, but if you look at the depth of liquidity they have, it's still limited in terms of how you can scale that model across pairs, right? It's and obviously they're doing some things with their V2, but we're bringing an options model which opens up both sides of the order book, and so that means that anybody can be a market maker. If you've got $5, you can be a market maker. Right. If you've got $5 million, and you can be a market maker, and you can operate on both sides of the order book, and it's really peer-to-peer, and that's very scalable. It's very easy. It's not easy, there's a marketing and operations job, but that technology you can take across assets into different markets, and as long as you can bring the market to that platform, you've now got a Web3 competitor to the likes of Robinhood, eToro, where you don't have to worry about the spreads. Zero fees, but huge spreads, right? Totally. We all know the story, and you don't have to worry about the solvency of the platform. And neither do you have to worry about, is there an institutional player that's just sucking up everybody's liquidity that's making all of these options, because it's peer-to-peer, and actually anybody can participate. And actually, if there was, and there will be institutional players naturally, but you could come along and offer a better rate. The market sets the rate on our options platform. So it just is, it literally just liberates sort of trading on assets.
So good. So good. And we'll come back to some of this. I've got a few little notes here. Colin, do you have any follow-up on that? Because I got one thing about just about the business side of DeFi that I really wanted to get into, because I'm fascinated by the space and how I think so many people will hear what Danny just said and be like, but how much money can I make? But how do I get an ROI? Like, what's the money I'm making? To me, I'm like, man, that's so second to the fundamentals. Like, if some project has solid fundamentals, can we think longer than just 2 or 3 months ahead? Because 2 or 3 months ahead, I've never thought of building anything if I'm not thinking 5 years ahead. Like, why would I waste my time? And so I think Danny is kind of, at least from some of our pre-chat, kind of on that mission as well. And I really want to touch on that. But anything project specific, call it on what Danny just said. And then we can always get back into it closer to the end.
Definitely. No, just to start, Danny, thanks for being here and bestowing upon us some of your wisdom. It's pretty amazing. No, last night it was crazy. I was laying in bed. I was just looking at the ceiling and I just couldn't sleep. I was like, oh man, so much on my mind. So I ended up getting out of bed and I came over to my computer here and I just clicked YouTube. And this is how crazy the world works sometimes. I think I clicked YouTube and I saw selling options and I'm like, I'm not a trader. I've never been a trader. Yeah. Why not though? I clicked on it and I watched this 30-minute video and didn't get much sleep after that because I was so excited. But I was like, wow, this is actually a whole nother world that I've never been exposed to, because I'm in DeFi projects, reviews, ROI dApps, all this stuff. But this side of trading, I was like, this is a new world. This is a whole new skill that wow. And I'm a young guy. I'm like, wow, this is a great skill I can work on the weekends or something. And needless to say, so then I started researching Foxify much more in depth. And then I saw options, selling options. And I was like, whoa, worlds colliding here. Then I really started to dive into the white paper and the user experience. And you mentioned it. But I'm very excited to explore this world in a decentralized way with focus on the user experience. And I think that's the thing that I'm most excited about as someone who's new to this space. Because I'm like, where do I start? But I have a good feeling that when this thing launches late June, I think it's late June, it's going to be a really good entry point for someone like me who wants to play around with a little risk capital and understand how this world works. So that's it. I just want to say that it's really awesome.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And actually, it's one thing. So the beta for the options will be earlier than the end of June. It'll be like middle of June. And there's something that we've really thought about. So you've got, with options, one of the challenges is if the market's setting the rate on options, or sorry, if the platform is setting the rate, then you're taking a risk on a number that somebody else has decided. What's unique about our options platform is that you as an individual can set the rate. So actually, Lucas could say, I'm going to offer anybody a 2x on ETH going plus 1% in 4 hours, right? Because he thinks it's very unlikely it's going to happen. I think ETH is flat or down, right? So I'll offer anyone 2x. But you might come along, Colin, and say, well, actually, I think the probability of that happening is, I don't think Lucas is being very fair. I'll offer anyone a 3x. And so it creates competition on both sides of the order book. So it's very unique in terms of that model. And our platform also will have, it's called IV, so implied volatility. So basically, what's the probability of an asset moving? And you then use that data to provide a price feed. So nobody can know, right? Because it's a bit like trading's a bit like it's a bit like, I suppose a football match, because you've got a form book, but anything can happen, right? And crypto is very similar. You've got a form book and you've got charts and TA and all of those things, but one market maker can flip the form book on its head at any point in time. So there is data there and guidance to kind of help people through that. But you're absolutely right. It provides the platform allows people that are very confident and educated to trade options if they're happy with the risk. But also you can fund an option almost like a bit like farming liquidity, and you can provide liquidity on an option at a rate that you believe you're comfortable with that level of risk, and it will perform either plus or minus. We're thinking of it as like almost like a quasi. It's almost like farming in a trading sense, because you can provide liquidity, and it's a bit like farming, right? You can farm and it says we're going to deliver X, Y, Z APY, and you go back to your farm and you've earned 300%, but it's dropped 90% in value. It's not much use to you, and so it has risks, but there is a side of it where people can be fairly passive participants if they want to.
I love it. And I like the educational side of things as well. Is like, looks like you guys are, I get a lot of pleasure from having someone buy their first Satoshi and they've never been exposed to the world. Like, my heart sings of like, this person now has $5 of Bitcoin and they're getting, it's just so cool to me. It's fascinating to me. And I was just literally calling and telling you, last week someone wanted help and I worked them through buying, it was on a centralized exchange, and they were so confused. And to me, it's like breathing. I was just like, what do you mean? And it brought me back to like, whoa, I totally forget that most people, they've heard of Bitcoin, but they'd have no idea even how to buy Bitcoin off a centralized exchange, let alone get into the DeFi world or any kind of decentralized anything. So it excites me for what Foxify is doing. I think you guys are doing some educational stuff, and I'm really big on that.
I think that's where liquidity provision is really interesting in a model like ours, isn't it? Because you've got, I've got a friend, actually, a really good friend of mine, and he contacted me recently. This is when there's a local top, right? Because he's never owned any crypto. And he says, I think banks are going to go to the wall and I should buy some Bitcoin. And, he does all right. So he's like, I'll put in 5 figures and what should I do? And I called him this week and I said, look, I'm not shilling to you, right? But rather than, put 20K into Bitcoin, I would just put it into our perps LP, because it's held in blue chip and stables anyway. The difference being that not only will you have the exposure to the backing asset, you also then earn APY. And he said, well, how does that work? And I said, well, when you put your money in the bank takes that money and they do other things that you don't understand, right? Like commercial investing, they trade, and they split that. They lend it out to people and they take varying degrees of risk with your money, and they pay you a horrendously low APY and they get very rich off of it. Whereas in a decentralized model, you can provide liquidity. It's the smart contracts doing the work, and it's just bringing people together. And you don't have to trust me as a person or as an organization. And he was like, okay, so what sort of return would you get? And I said, I think you'll probably get, anywhere between 25 and 50% a year. And he was like,
they don't get it.
And that's blue chips relatively low risk, and just a simple model like the PLP. We call it PLP, so perps liquidity pool. Everybody who copies GMX puts their own letter before instead of GLP, and we thought we're not going to be that self-indulgent. We're just going to call it the perps liquidity pool. Rather than doing what everyone else does. But yeah, I think the whole peer-to-pool model is a really sort of like it's a simple version of what happens in the real financial world, right? Somebody provides liquidity that comes with a little bit of risk, and then in exchange for that liquidity, being used as a utility, they then make a return. The difference is you're not paying for skyscrapers in the middle of city centers and thousands of employees. It's very decentralized.
Yeah, and that's what I'm excited for. I mean, I do, for anyone watching, I don't know, we don't attract any major traders because we just don't talk about it. I'll swing trade something if I feel really confident on something. And I don't mind doing that, but I don't sit watching charts all day because I got things to do. Yeah. But just like the GLP and GMX is just like buy it, hold it, get paid, platform increases in exposure, or the marketing engine kicks in and now you make more. And I'm really into investing. And I think a lot of people think, oh, I'll just buy something and trade it. That's not investing. Or I'll get into these 2% dApps, which I'm a fan of. Like I play in that world, like 5 or 10% of my portfolio will be in high risk stuff, but that's not investing. That's like super short-term thinking. How do I cash flow some? How do I make some money? So I'm constantly looking for what can I invest in? Big difference. And I'm looking a few years out. Like, will this thing be successful a few years out? And I kind of want to move into the business side of things. It seems like what the space is missing is there's these genius 17, 18-year-olds, and I freaking love their brain. They're building all this stuff on the blockchain. They're building the most amazing projects. But when it comes to running a community, they're just out of their depth with it, which is fine. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. But so they try to hire a team or build a business around it. Let's just say if I was 18 and you would have given me my first business, I started when I was 25 and it failed 3 years later. But if you would have given me $5 million at 18 years old, I would have blown it. Like I would have blown it. And so I see all these projects raise a bunch of money and they have good intentions, but they blow it because they don't know how to run a business. And just from my investigation of kind of you and what your team is building, because I'm sure you have strengths and weaknesses and your team covers those strengths and they have their own weaknesses. I like what you're building on that front. So just to talk about you, what's kind of your background in business? Because you seem super savvy. This isn't your first rodeo, and you've chosen to build something in crypto instead of the real world as for a change.
Yeah, good question. Look, I've been around a bit. I'm not 20 years old, unfortunately. But my background, I started off in very small companies, and then I was very conscious. I went into work very early, actually. I was very conscious that I needed to learn a lot. And so I went and looked for the biggest company that would hire me. And I went and worked for DHL at the time. It was about 100 billion turnover. Worked, first of all in like a corporate sales role in their supply chain division, and then got into my first leadership position with those guys. Then did several years in the industrial components world. Again, working through sort of like up to a position where I was sort of managing my own department. And then I went to Schneider Electric. That was an interesting 4 years. I did 4 years with Schneider, which is 26 billion turnover energy and sustainability business, often called the biggest company nobody's ever heard of. And I ran their electric vehicle charging business across a few markets. And then I was, getting a little bit fat around the middle, could feel myself slowing down. You either become part of the furniture or you need to get out. And in my mid-30s, I went into the startup world, joined a SaaS business. It's sort of like I was number 2 in the business, sort of like chief revenue officer. Worked with the CEO there to scale that business over a couple of years through the pandemic as well. Actually, we scaled that sort of up to sort of 120 million valuation. And as we were completing that investment round, I had a decision to make. Really, you kind of your career works in cycles, and I'd been a frustrated investor within DeFi for some time, for several years. I could see just so much potential. Almost always wasted. And I was like, I'm sure there's a way you could do this. And so I'd had this idea that I've been developing for some time. And so for me, it was, do I want to sign up for another couple of years doing this, or do I want to roll the dice? So I decided to roll the dice, launched my first project a week before Terra Luna last year. Literally quit my job. Literally rolled the dice, and I funded the startup myself, and then we raised liquidity from the market that makes sort of the wheels turn in the project. And we launched, like I said, a week before Terra Luna. We called it MDB, stands for Make DeFi Better, because we want to try and make a positive contribution. I'll be honest, in hindsight, I always say this, so apologies if I offend anyone in my own community. I say it a lot. My biggest mistake is always overestimating the average DeFi investor. I thought if you could have something that would be stable, deliver 40, 50, 70, 80% yields annually, and be really reliable and trustworthy, then it would just be crazy, right? Why wouldn't the whole world go for that? And in truth, people, I think people say they're looking for one thing. Quite often they're looking for dopamine, or or it's get rich quick or nothing. And but it was an interesting experience, and MDP is still going super strong today. It's sort of like 5x from launch. We've touched like 8x from launch numerous times, and that's in a protocol that actually pays out yield in staking and farming, pretty healthy yields as well. So we've I think we've been very lucky, because we kind of went through this horrendous experience in terms of the market crash, and we built this really loyal community, and we've been super, super lucky. And that's kind of, I suppose the first year for me in Web3 was, I always say, like, whatever you're doing, what you do before it should be like a training course for the next thing you want to do. Right. And, probably me going from corporate into the startup world, which was a bit of a culture shock at first. That was like a training course for setting up MDB. And then the first year with MDB is very much like a training course, probably to be ready for Foxify.
Very cool. Totally the right mindset. Yeah, 100%. When you say underestimating or overestimating the typical crypto investor, DeFi investor, expand on that a little bit. What do you think people, if you could wave a magic wand and have the average investor who's maybe watching this, like just a small paradigm shift, or like you could help them put on some glasses and just have a few different belief shifts, or just see things a little differently, what would those things be if you could magically change someone's perspective?
I think it's just some patience as well, right? And I think one thing, and this is I think one thing in DeFi, I don't think investors are demanding enough. And there's people that I know that if you keep launching project after project and raising 7 figures every time, and everything they've ever done has been absolute trash. And at what point do the same people keep giving these people money, and at what point does it become self-inflicted, right? And it doesn't make it okay, but it is, there is a pattern of behavior there. And I think you've got this paradox within the industry where we talk about, I talked about this a lot recently actually with the whole Pepe thing, and you can do what I've done, right? And you can I very rarely do I meet someone in this industry that's given up what I've given up to be in the industry. Most people are like at the peak of their powers, and it's been if I'm honest, it's been a step up for them. And so for me, it was I gave up a lot to be in the industry, and you think people would be like open arms, but in truth, we talk about, people talk about the SEC, and it's this whole sort of like Braveheart. We want to bring it back for the people, and the SEC want to take it away from us. And Bitcoin's all about freedom, but it's not actually. It's not, because when the chips are down and people have a decision to make, you see where the liquidity goes. Someone offers 1% a day on a node project, and they raise 7 million, like bang. There's a frog coin, and Binance lists them, no disrespect, because I love Binance. My first project was built on Binance, but these are the mechanics of the industry, and these are hard facts. They get listed like that, right? Yeah. And, and what's driving that? The wheels that are driving that is money. And so virtue signaling is like this really like, is a very common place within the industry, because we just want to take back control. And, look at these horrible bankers who are, drinking the blood of poor children. But someone gets a sniff of money, all of a sudden the behavior changes very, very quickly. And
it's super predictable. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, we're talking to a lot of influencers and KOLs at the moment. There's one in particular that I met recently, and he's big, right? He's like 700,000-800,000 followers, and a really, really good guy, super professional. And you meet him, and he says, if you work with people like X, Y, and Z, I will not work with you. And so it's nice to meet those people every now and then that you know, they're not thinking short term, they're in it for the long term. But until like that becomes the normal behavior,
love it.
And as a society, if we don't reject the other behaviors, then we're part of the system. And I think, and I'm guilty of that as well, right? Like sometimes the dopamine will get me, and I'll chuck a little bit into something, and you know, if I met myself a few days later, I'd say, "What were you doing?" So
100%.
I think all of us have a part to play in that.
Yeah, I think money is I studied money for years because I grew up in a trailer park. So money really, I saw someone who's 25 driving a Ferrari down the street with their top down, and I'm working on the oil rigs. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm not dumb. Like, why am I here? Like, what beliefs construct my reality here of whatever? And I studied money. I mean, the energy of money, the spirituality behind money. I'm obsessed with the idea of money as a tool. And I can identify times in my life where money was my master and I wasn't its master. And it's easy to flip into, you know, money kind of quantitative, like just looking at the amount of money and not caring where it's coming from. And I've fallen into that trap as well, is like the quick dopamine hit, like you said. So that's just, if I could wave a magic wand, I'd be like, man, I get frustrated because if I do a video tomorrow saying how to make $1,000 per day, easy, it'll get, you know, X amount of views. If I do a video on here's the fundamentals of how the blockchain operates and the business opportunities on blockchain, it's like 5 people and they're kind of like, but how do I make money? And I'm like, man, if we can find a way to, again, I guess just raise the standard of how we talk about things and what projects are allowed to launch, because we probably turned down a huge amount of projects because I'm just like, there's nothing here. There's nothing new here. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And then you see the back end deals, which is new to me as our kind of business and brand grew. I'm just like, and they're going to offer me 10% of back end and they don't advertise it on the front end. Like, this is what's actually happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
This is crazy. This is crazy how much money is moving around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting industry to say the least. And yeah, I think we've definitely got a lot of growing up to do.
Yeah.
I think it's going to come from regulation, right? People, it's the elephant in the room, and you know, and people are, it's a very interesting. People, I think, quite often people are anti-regulation for all the wrong reasons, and actually, you know, I kind of feel like regulation probably is what the industry needs.
I'm ready for it too. At first, a year ago, I would have been like, F them and F the government and all that. And I think all governments are corrupt and they grow too big. But I heard a really great thing from Jordan Peterson lately of like, he's like, we need the left, we need the right. Because if there was just one side, I'd be shooting guns and doing wheelies because I'm that kind of guy. And everyone else would be, you know, equal pay and no one owns anything. And so it's just like whatever society needs at any given time, when the people left and right come together and they kind of, the middle is found to what society needs right now. And sometimes there's a time for war, sometimes there's a time for peace. And just depending on what society needs, the prevailing powers will win. And I think we see the pendulum kind of moving to the other direction right now, people getting tired of some narratives. Yeah. And in 20 years, the pendulum will swing the other way because now we don't need to. So I thought that was really interesting. And I think DeFi will find a way. And I'm kind of down for regulation because I'd like some more liquidity, some more money from savvier, bigger institutions coming into the space. And it would kind of drown out the little, like 7 figures is no longer a big amount when huge money is pouring in. And it would kind of drown out the, you know, the noise, I think.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. And that's part of our roadmap, actually. I think, you know, with not to turn that into a shield, but, you know, with Foxify, you know, we see a much bigger opportunity than crypto. Crypto is the easiest place to start in terms of regulation. And, you know, in terms of what we do, actually, we don't take custody of any funds. Our platform doesn't set the price of anything. It's all peer-to-peer. So from you know, where we're registered, it doesn't require a license, and because you're not holding it and selling an asset, and neither are we pricing a financial asset, right? We're not selling a financial instrument. It's purely smart contracts that are facilitating interactions between others in an independent, decentralized way. However, if you know the forex trading volume in a week is more than the whole of crypto in a year, right?
Yeah.
And so if you want to tap into that market, and I think Web3 offers something that's decentralized, right? And it offers something that you can't get in the current system. And but you know, let's be honest. I think if you're going to start, you know, you can trade anything on Foxify. In theory, you know, the technology is built that you can trade anything that has a pair. So you could trade Tesla stocks, you could trade commodities, you can trade, you know, forex indexes, as long as it's got a token and you can track it on chain. However, as soon as you move into that sort of area, then you know you're definitely rubbing much harder up against sort of regulation. But part of our very explicit roadmap is land, expand within sort of where we're starting, and then our sort of medium term roadmap is, you know, deliver success with plan A, and then plan B is then use the funds and the capital that we're generating from that successful business to then expand into more regulated markets. But obviously that requires, you know, more compliance, KYC, AML, things like that, on a much more organized scale.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to ask this question because we need to ask it, and I'll probably bite this right to the start of the video so it gets people to watch it. If someone is looking at Foxify and they're just like, oh, okay, I'm going to deploy some capital, and everyone is thinking of return. Like, how do I get a return on this? I think we have concluded that Foxify knows what they're doing. At least from my perspective, there's a company being built. There's a marketing team. And to me, marketing is the most important part of at least initial business growth, of like, how do you actually get the word out? Because if no one knows about the best thing on earth, then it's not really the best thing. I think you have the fundamentals on that. So, and people can decide for themselves whether they see that or not. And maybe someone's a little more savvy of an investor and saying, yeah, I'm in it for a bit of a longer term. I'm not just looking for a 2% every day tomorrow and you know, to the moon. What's sort of the passive approach? So let's say we're not traders. Someone's watching. They're like, well, I'm not trading. Yeah. And I know it works a lot like GMX, but just for someone who's like, okay, should I do some things in Foxify? What are their opportunities for making some returns on their money?
Yeah, you've got two opportunities. You can you've either got the PLP, so our perpetuals liquidity pool, and by contributing to the perps liquidity pool, what you're effectively doing is providing capital that acts as leverage during trading. So you know, it's a bit like depositing into an organization, and you know, and people who use the utility, the trading platform, will pay fees. And the fees go back to, or a large portion of the fees go back to the liquidity providers. The asset is held in a basket like an ETF, so it's 70% Bitcoin in ETH, and like 20-25% stable. So it's slightly hedged as well, to remove some of the volatility. So if you want to, I think that is a very clever way for somebody who, you know, if personally, not financial advice, but if I was sitting on a lot of Bitcoin, I would just put it into the perps liquidity pool, right? Because ETH and Bitcoin, you know, largely track each other. And I think if there was a bull run, then, you know, I think ETH probably sees a 5x probably a bit easier than Bitcoin does, for instance, although both have obviously huge upside potential. So great way of getting exposure to, you know, two of the most trusted assets in the industry, with a bit of a hedge on stables, and basically your liquidity is being used, and in return for that liquidity being used, then you're receiving daily fees. Now, I think it's really important to always talk about risks, right? And it's decentralized, so you know, audited smart contracts. However, if traders on aggregate are winning more than they lose, then the value of that PLP will go down. But when they lose more than they win, then the value goes up. And whilst any organisation might have a bad day, typically over time, statistically, the probability is that traders lose more than they win, basically. So that's a great way. The other way is with the Foxify token itself, which it offers. It's a governance token, so you get to vote on any sort of changes or improvements on the platform. And then it's really simple. You just stake that token, and it will earn you a share of the platform fees, and that will be paid to you in 50% native, 50% stable. So you get real yield, and you get Foxify tokens. And and you can auto stake that into the perps liquidity pool if you want to. So if
nice.
I had,
I didn't know that.
$100, making me a couple of dollars a month, then I could say, well, automatically put my couple of dollars into the perps liquidity pool, and then I earn, so there's like 2 stages to being able to earn same capital if you
I actually didn't know that. I missed that somewhere. I didn't know that. So it's just automated. You can just reinvest it basically in some way. Like it just.
Well, you could reinvest it back into itself, or you can auto stake it across to the perps liquidity pool. So it would, I don't know, say for instance, this week I've earned $1,000, right? Because I've got a lot of Foxify staked. And it will take that $1,000 and it will liquidate it into the PLP. That'll provide me ETFs, and then I'm earning in Bitcoin, ETH, and stable. That PLP pays out in the same ETF. So a great way of earning sort of blue chips.
Cool. So just to maybe just simplify it for anyone, I see it as you can invest in, in the company itself with the actual Foxify token, just like I guess you could invest in if you were betting on Tesla. And then I see the other as you're providing liquidity. So if you want to provide liquidity to the platform and get a fee or get paid for doing so without the confusion of trying to, I need to put one Bitcoin and 6 ETH and 200 stable coin, you're just buying a token and the platform does it for you, redistributes it, you just get paid out. Exactly. With the risks, like you mentioned, I think it is important for people to know. Like you said, smart contracts are all audited, but I guess there's always a risk of someone smarter than everyone else finding some way to hack something. Like any smart contract, there's always exploits potential for. And then obviously Bitcoin, Ethereum, the market's going down. Your actual token would lose value because Bitcoin and ETH are worth less. It's hedged a little bit against stablecoin. And I would say it'd be the safest pool you could probably get into because Bitcoin and ETH are sort of the biggest. You're not getting into some small market cap type pairs. And then the Foxify token, I guess being Foxify doesn't work the way the world plans it to. And for whatever reason, the Foxify token would drop in value because there'd be less and less interest in Foxify. So you're betting on the upside and you're betting on the success of Foxify when you buy the token. Would that basically sum up the risks people can?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the trade-off there is that you can earn like really good yield for providing liquidity, but the upside potential is probably limited versus Foxify, right? Because the probability of Bitcoin doing a 50x in the next 12 months probably extremely slim. But it's I'm not saying it's probable, but it's definitely possible for Foxify to do that. So you're kind of trading off sort of potential price movement. Part of the ETF is actually also Foxify tokens. So the more liquidity there is in the protocol, actually, the more Foxify tokens will be locked up. And because the platform pays out in 50%. On the Foxify token, because it pays 50% stable, 50% Foxify. People are trading in stables, right? If the platform was doing, say like GMX sort of numbers, and it was doing like $500,000 a day in fees, and say, a lot of that goes to the PLP, but say, for instance, $200,000 was going into the staking pool, then that would mean $100,000 a day of internal buy pressure on the Foxify token as well, actually. So the system is designed to really put true value back into the token itself.
Yep. How can people get the Foxify token? When does that move into place?
So we'll be seeding liquidity so it'll be the end of June. So right at the end of June, it'll probably be like the 30th, maybe the 1st or 2nd of July at the absolute latest. We will have we don't want like this big pump and dump. We've always worked really hard to kind of avoid that sort of approach. So we're doing a few IDOs, which will get the name out there. So we just got agreement to pay from a central exchange that's kind of big in sort of like in Iberia and Latin America, so it gives us some good exposure there. We will be listed on a 20 central exchange as well, and we'll probably pick one other smaller exchange, and then we'll also then list on a decentralized exchange. There'll be a few IDOs out there in the Arbitrum sort of world. That people can jump on. I do expect that they'll sell out like really, really quickly because they're going to be relatively small, because we don't, like I say, we want to avoid that sort of like pump and dump situation you get with pre-sales. But we are launching like a really interesting NFT that will give an upside in tokens, and it will vest out the tokens to you over 12 months. Cool. And then it will retain the upside for life. Cool. So you imagine if you buy this Foxify NFT, it's basically a way of getting into like our pre-sale. and then it will vest tokens out to you. But they'll be staked from day one as well. So details are going to be coming out in the next few days on that. But that will be capped and it's vested because everything, our FTV will be like 45 million when we launch, but the actual value of tokens actually circulating will only be about 2 million. So we're controlling things like really tightly to make sure that there's value there.
Very cool. And when people get those NFTs, they are vested or they're staked automatically the full amount of the Foxify tokens it's worth or whatever from day one to early, or whenever it goes live. Yeah. Very, very cool. That detail I didn't have, so that excites me.
We haven't actually put that. We've mentioned that in an AMA, but we haven't actually. In the next few days, we're going to put out something official. So that's pretty hot off the press.
Got it. We'll do a follow-up video here. We're also going to do a few videos on things over the next few weeks. Anyways, I think we've talked about Danny's background. I think the business savviness is something I look at. Again, if I was 19 and I was building something, I would just I'd pay them well, a 40 or 50-year-old veteran in the business space, so they could just show me, hey, young pup, like you don't see this, but I see it. I've made so many mistakes and I'm still learning. Just
but you probably wouldn't do that if you're 19, because
that's true.
Especially as men, our egos are pretty big things at 19 years old, aren't they?
True that. Yeah. I think whoever is in charge of your community, which I know you have access to, but I think you have, who reached out to me who's kind of like the affiliate and kind of the marketing marketer? Rachel.
Yeah, Rachel on the affiliate side.
Awesome personality.
We've got a couple of ladies in the team actually. Our CMO is Alice, and then we've got Rachel on the affiliate. So we've got very diverse team.
Yeah, good call for bringing in. We have some women in our community, and I'm always stoked when they show up because men seem to just charge forward, destroy, and conquer, and I think that's beautiful. And to me, when I see women investors or even women in business, I'm just like, wow, they make so much better decisions because they can leave their egos. And now if you can have both working together, building something, you're set. Like you have it's just kind of a male dominated industry, for better or worse. That's the way it is right now. So
it is. It's super male dominated, and it needs to mature a little bit.
We talked about the token. We talked about the launch of the token. We talked about the risks, which if you actually started assessing, anyone watching this, assessing projects based upon risk, we have a 10 thing we go through. And like, if you don't know who it is behind it, if it hasn't been audited, like, I don't care if they're offering me 50% per day. I mean, at that point, I'd take the risk. But if they're offering me 2% per day, but it's locked up for 60 days, I'm a hard no. I'm just like, the risk reward is not in my favor. Just plot it out, a basic risk reward. Look at it and say, what's the upside? What's the downside? And most projects nowadays, I don't see enough upside to make me want to get into it. So again, when I tell people I'm looking at 5 to 10% per month returns, and I consider that, I'm kicking Wall Street's ass.
Yeah.
They don't get excited by it. They're just like, but I want 40, 50% per month. And I'm like, you can do that in this space.
The risk is insane, especially in a low liquidity market.
Massive. So I'll buy $100 or $200. I mean, I bought a little frog-based token yesterday. I bought $200 of it, and if it disappears tomorrow, I don't even care about. I don't even. $200 can vanish tomorrow. But if your $200 is half of your portfolio right now, I think it's madness. It's insane, and I see a lot of that happening. So I do appreciate Foxify and you guys' level of mastery in this space, and I think your intent of what you're trying to bring to this space.
Yeah, thank you.
I love it.
Thank you. We're trying.
You trying. Colin, do you got any follow-up questions before we wrap it up? I know you've been kind of sitting there taking notes, but
I'm just soaking it all in. I do have two questions. So there was a huge thing on the Zeely quests, minting NFTs, the free NFTs. Can you just very briefly give us an overview of what that is? And if people have been participating in those quests, how does that fit into the ecosystem?
Yeah, look, I think if you read our white paper, you'll see there's like this combination of a number of things that kind of make up our strategy. So our marketing's very aggressive. You can imagine this brand on, a NASCAR or on the back of a boxer's jersey. So, we signed Tyson Fury, who's obviously a global top 20 athlete, reigning heavyweight world champion. And then we've got the affiliate, which then brings people together. It brings sort of that gamification, building of teams. And then the community is like super, super important. And There's something with the options that's very provocative, actually, which blend into why community is so important for us. So with anything in the industry, you can offer some TA or a chart or something, but it's very hard for anybody in any position to share something that they've done and not be at risk of it becoming financial advice, right? And I know it's happening every day, but it is a risk, right? If you say, I've just put $200 in X coin, and then you share that on social media, then that comes with some risk that you could be giving financial advice. The way our options work is it's very provocative, because I could fund an option and say, I think there's no chance Bitcoin's going to go back up to 30K. And actually, if it goes more than 1% tomorrow, I'll pay anyone a 5x. And then I could share that. And I'm not saying do what I do. I'm saying come and take my money. If I'm wrong and you're right, you can take the money off of me. And so there's a real sort of like provocative nature there, and that's very deliberate. So from a community perspective as well, the way the NFTs work is that you can, when you mint an NFT, you have to join a team. There's only going to be a couple of thousand. They're free. You do some community tasks, so you invest in the community a bit, and then the community pays you back. I think some of even the lowest range of NFTs have been picking up a couple of $100, and the golds, which are like 1 in 100 chance of minting one, the golds will be worth thousands of dollars, I'm sure, right? Because they get a big chunk off a trading piece. So yeah, get in the community. There's only going to be 1,000 on the last 2 mints. So I think it's going to go like wildfire. But if you're lucky enough to mint like a gold, I'm hand on heart, I believe, not financial advice, it'll be worth thousands and thousands of dollars when the platform launches, and the silver will be worth a lot as well. And it's free. All you have to do is contribute a little bit to the community, and it pays you back.
Put in a little work.
And the golds are going to be so valuable because of trading fees, like reduced trading fees, right? Is that how that?
Yeah, so they give like 25% discount off of trading fees, which is a big chunk. Yeah. And if somebody's trading like $1 million a day, then it's it's a really healthy amount. We will be putting a cap on them, because obviously there has to be a limit, right? But that cap is going to be north of $10,000. So that NFT will earn at least $10,000 in
for the right
cap.
person.
Yeah.
I have everything. And again, I just want people watching is like, I kind of stayed away from the questions everyone else was asking, because it's out there. There's some really great AMAs, and I'll even link some below that deal with all the little tiny specifics. But I think I wanted to get a macro view of, if I was to bet if a project is going to be around in the next, let's say 2 years, which I know is 2 decades in crypto and DeFi, that's honestly the projects I'm most interested in getting at. And
Thank you.
think what you guys are doing, I'd say yes to that. So
yeah. Well, we're very stubborn. Like the old Monty Python with his leg missing, he's still hopping. That's us. When you launch a project a week before Terra Luna and the world crumbles around you, we just we can't quit. We don't know when we'll be. So we'll be around. Don't worry about that.
I think it's worth paying attention to anyone. I remember talking to someone who was it was on my last podcast, which, by the way, shameless plug, CryptoLabs is launching a podcast. We used to have like the Grant Cardones of the world on our podcast. I loved connecting with people like that. Some big marketers, like I think Tyson Fury, and you guys choosing him, great option, just because he's a personality and he gets attention. He knows how to do it.
Yeah.
But then we also had some savvy people in the business world. This guy was an investor, and he's like, half the time I don't care to hear the pitch. I don't care about what it's about. I want to first get to know the tenacity of the CEO or of the founder of whomever is leading it. And until they cross that, like until they get a check mark, then I'll look at the product. But to them, it's like you can pivot your way to a great product, but you can't. So to me, I'm just like, what's the team like? And are they resilient? And anyone building right now in a bear market and is finding a way to stay excited about it, I'm just like, whether they're successful now or in the future, these people are winners, because they're building in the worst time to build, and they're like, to me, that excites me. So thank you.
What is it? There's a famous saying, which is show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser.
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So good. I'll put links for all the Foxify stuff below. We'll gather all the links. I hope this was helpful. And if you have any follow-up questions, if anyone has follow-up questions, do let me know, especially our CryptoLabs community. We can help answer questions and probably even relay them to the team at Foxify if there's something we missed.
Cool. Great to be
Awesome.
here. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, Danny. Thank you.